Hi, I'm Malika Bilal, filling in for Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, targeted because of the color of their skin, we'll discuss the deadly stigma of albinism in Tanzania. With me is digital producer Dan Ming, and he'll be looking out for all of your live feedback as it rolls in. Dan, what are you seeing online so far?
Well, there's a lot of talk in Tanzania, from Tanzania, about the recent waves of attacks against people with albinism. If you look at my screen here, the BA Foundation writes, "Where is the humanity in our Tanzania? 11 days, 5 attacks of people with albinism." And of course, we'll hear from our guests, but we also want to hear from you at home. What's the root cause of these attacks? Tweet me with the hashtag AJStream.
And before we get into Tanzania, here's a quick look at a few of the other stories we're keeping tabs on. Tanzanians with albinism are being mutilated for their body parts. That's because of centuries-old myths perpetuated by witch doctors who say albino hands or legs can be used to gain power and wealth. Albinism is a genetic condition marked by the absence of pigment from the skin, hair, and eyes. In Tanzania and other East African countries, the limbs and organs of these people are sold by witch doctors for thousands of dollars. 5 attacks against people with the disorder were reported in Tanzania last month, and advocates are calling for the human rights of those with albinism to be protected. Well, today we want to understand what it's like to live in Tanzania with albinism and discuss what should be done to end threats of violence against people with the condition. To discuss this, we have via Skype in Dar es Salaam, Gamaliel Mboya, a university student who works with Under the Same Sun. That's an advocacy group for people with albinism. In Dodoma, Tanzania, AL-SHAYMAA KWEGYIR, Tanzanian member of parliament who represents people with disabilities. And in Erlangen, Germany, ABDALLAH POSSI, a lawyer originally from Tanzania. Welcome to all of our guests. I want to start with Gamaliel, if you could describe what it was like to grow up with albinism in Tanzania as a child.
Oh, thank you. I was born and raised as a person with albinism 30 years ago in southern highlands of Tanzania, and I was raised there. So being a child with albinism, it sounds great to the family, to the society that surrounds you. People normally think that this is not a normal human being. Maybe because as you are born as a person who lacks some sort of ingredients or chemicals or some of the nutrients in the body, and sometimes think that it's a curse. So when I was growing as a person with albinism, I could hear many people in the streets calling me names, and I just felt that as if something is not normal to me. You could see children mocking at me, staring at me. So it was quite not an easy thing to grow as a person with albinism, because the society misunderstood the whole concept of albinism, and any person could raise up whatever they think about me as a person with albinism, because either they could call me a ghost, they can say I have some mystical powers. So all these myths and wrong beliefs on albinism, I could hear when I was growing, and they were disturbing me psychologically, because every time I could think that, okay, I'm walking in the street, but I'm not normal as other people.
Gamaliel, when did you know that it was not a curse? At what age was that something that you could comprehend that you were not cursed?
It was not easy, because I could hear all this kind of misconception, people speaking about me, but most of the time when I was now going to the church during Sunday school session, I could learn on the Bible, people speaking, teaching about love, about God, about that all people are normal. So that is when now I started to realize that I'm a child of God. But still, the level of discrimination, the level of the way people perceive me was intense in the society. So it reached a time that personally inside I had this belief that I'm just normal, I can do anything. But I had to face the reality of the society misunderstanding me, meaning that they think the way they think about me, that I'm not a normal human being.
Right.
So all this have been growing up with it.
Right. Well, speaking of that level of discrimination growing up, I want to play a clip from a 2011 Al Jazeera documentary. Now, this is a documentary called The Spell of the Albino. And I want you all to have a listen to Adam, who's very young, but he tells his story. Have a listen to this.
Adam, pole. Pole sana.
Baadaye uru baba wako atalipea kijana kule kuja kwa nani?
Nuko yote ataliwogije.
Ataliwogije. Aho bali yashikike laki.
Owo kalulu.
Owo kalulu.
Sanje nakumtanda.
Ogo timwa dogo tabaru.
Al-SHAYMAA, when you see that, when you hear that, what strikes you? Because what strikes me, I'll say, is hearing about his father and his complicity in it.
Yeah. I remember I was there. I went there to see Adam when he was chopped off his hand. I was there. He was talking about seeing those people coming to chop his hand. He saw them. And he just found that the hand was not there. They just put the machete and cut off the hand and ran with the hand. Therefore, he was telling the story about the pains he feels, the pains of he feels on the hand after the chopped hand. That's what he was just explaining what happened. And as you can hear, he was speaking the Sukuma language, not Swahili.
All right, so Al-SHAYMAA, I'd like to get Abdallah into the conversation. We have a couple of tweets here, Abdallah. Here, take a listen. Helio writes, and we asked what the government should do. Helio writes, they should have started an education process 50 or 30 years ago. This wouldn't be happening, so the root of the matter is ignorance. But then we have another tweet with a different tone. So Temi Tope writes, Dear world, this is my beautiful burst of sunshine niece, Tally Moore. She is amazing, she is human, she is # not a ghost. So Abdallah, we see that people are pushing back against this perception, but I want your thoughts. Where does this perception come from?
You see, it's a combination of many things. First, as you've said, ignorance, because ignorance makes people fearful for what they do not know. And in case of anything, the person to be blamed is the one who is seen to be different. And so that's exactly the same with albinism. People don't know about albinism, and because of that, there is all sorts of perceptions going on. Now, to make matters worse, in a kind of situation like that, you need a system which protects marginalized people. I mean, people with albinism, people with disability, well, people with all kind of situation which make them marginalized. Very unfortunately, Tanzania, we have very inadequate, I would say, anti-discrimination provisions in the Constitution, which do not adequately address issues of marginalized groups like persons with albinism. Of course, yes, there is anti-discrimination provision which mention various grounds of discrimination, and one might be tempted to say that, okay, for that matter, persons with albinism are also covered, but having an anti-discrimination provision alone without having other provisions in the law which address in detail specific issues of these marginalized groups is not adequate enough, and that's exactly the same. That's exactly the case with our law. Of course, that's the Constitution.
Right. Well, yeah. I want to bring in another guest, someone who has studied this very closely from Tabora, Tanzania, Vicky Ntetema. She's the executive director of Under the Same Sun. And Vicky, you went undercover to expose witch doctors using people with albinism for their body parts. What was it that you discovered? And can you explain then, why are we seeing this resurgence? We've seen a spate of killings recently. Why now?
What I discovered when I went undercover was that witch doctors are telling their clients that if they want to be successful, and if they want to be rich, if they want to win elections, then they have to use body parts of persons with albinism, which they mix with their magic potion, which is a secret potion, and they will make them successful. And so they told me that quite a lot of politicians and wealthy people, businessmen and women, do consult them. And especially during elections, they would go to them in order to win elections. Now, I remember in 2009, when the killings were at the peak in Tanzania, the Prime Minister, Mizengo Peter Pinda, did announce, and he gave a directive that all licenses of witch doctors and traditional healers should be banned. That was in January 2009.
Did it happen?
Yes, there was a ban, but people were still, witch doctors were still doing it underground. They went underground, but you couldn't see banners and all these ads everywhere in the streets. Now, on the 30th of September 2010, just 1 month before the general elections, where we're talking about parliamentary elections and also presidential elections, that is the time when the ban was lifted. And the government said that they've lifted the ban because 60% of Tanzanians consult witch doctors. Now, it was very convenient for them to lift the ban just 1 month before elections. And I remember when the ban was in place in 2009, January, witch doctors were up in arms, and they said that they warned the politicians and said to them that, well, you're placing a ban right now, but during election campaigns, do not come and consult us. So we see that right now we will have local elections, and also in 2015, that is next year, we'll have general elections, and we see this resurgence. So it worries us, and persons with albinism in Tanzania live in fear.
Well,
actually, can I
please go
add
ahead.
something?
Go ahead, Abdallah.
Yeah, there is something about that. Well, the traditional healers, witch doctors, there is a law called alternative. Well, it's about alternative treatment or alternative medicine. It is said that it was designed in order to regulate the activities of those people who offer treatment for persons who cannot be treated at the hospital. Now, the problem, of course, one would assume that this could be a law for herbalists and persons who use plants and such kind of things. But unfortunately, the law is designed in such a way it allows almost everybody to qualify as a traditional healer, because it allows such persons who use things like spirit, things which cannot be scientifically explained, and that's the whole problem. And even the administration, administering it, the monitoring it, the enforcement of it, to ensure to know which persons are or which persons are not complying with that law is very much in a shamble. And
right, well, but what it sounds like, and what Gamaliel, I'd like you to pick up on what Abdallah and what Vicky said. She mentioned the 60% of people consulting witch doctors, so it sounds like there is a demand. If that's true, how do you feel when you walk out in the streets? Are you able to walk easily without fear?
Actually, it is very scary as a person with albinism, because at first, before the year 2000, you could just sense when I walk in the street, I could just see maybe people are mocking at me, but right from 2000 to date, when you are walking in the street, you are actually fearful that someone would not only discriminate or mock at you, but he's searching for your body parts, for hunting you. So as a person with albinism, it comes a point whereby my activities are limited. I couldn't walk in some areas that I'm not very conversant with them. POSSI spoke about the law, and I think there is much more to be done, especially by the government, because the law of traditional healers and alternative medicine really provide many loopholes for witch doctors. And personally speaking, when we speak about traditional healers and witch doctors, there's not a clear line that can separate them. And to me, they are my enemies, because every incident, at least more than I can say, almost all the recording incidents of attacks and killings for people with albinism, you will see that witch doctors were involved. And yet the law does not provide any prohibition of their activities.
Right.
So Gamaliel, oh, go ahead. Abdallah.
Yeah, and actually I would like to say one thing, that it's not really a defense to say that because 60% of Tanzanians consult them, then the law or the ban should exist. Because it's like saying that, you see, if people are not educated and therefore not educate them, let them live the way they want to live, and that's not a proper approach. The proper approach would have been to make sure that people are educated in such a way that they move away from such kind of beliefs. And that's exactly the problem which I've seen with albinism, especially in the areas where the killings have been rampant, that the only thing which have been done was simply to put people in, especially children, in concentrated schools, and nothing like awareness campaign, nothing like enforcement of the law. And so at the end of the day, we are doing things which do not really help, and especially in if we are considering what is to happen in many years.
All right, Abdallah. So we have a question, just going back to that issue of the courts and the justice system. Vicky, I want to ask this question to you. Pfizer writes in, have any cases been reported to the necessary authority in the past, and what measures have been taken to administer justice? So Vicky, do you think the courts are doing enough to curb this? Go ahead.
No, the courts are not doing enough, I would say, because we have more than 100 incidences. More than 70 of those are fatal. People have been murdered, but we have only 10 cases that have reached the courts, and only 5 cases that went through, and people are waiting to be executed. I mean, that is the penalty, that is the sentence that they were given. So what I'm saying is that we have quite a lot of killings, a number of people who have been injured, maimed, mutilated, and a few cases have reached the court. That is not enough for us.
I want to play a video clip here. This is from Alicia Ludano of the UN Office on Human Rights, and she talks to us about one of the apparent solutions that has been put in place, and that's a safe house. These are safe houses for Tanzanian children with albinism, but she explains why they may not be such a good idea. Have a look at this.
So it was an initiative that was welcome at the time. It was an emergency protective measure that it was important at the time, but it has become a long-lasting place to host children with albinism. It has become a place where families with children abandon their children there, a dumping place for families who wants to get rid of their children. Unfortunately, what we have seen is that these centers are reinforcing segregation and are separating the children from their families.
So Shaymaa, you heard what she had to say about these safe houses. Can you explain why people believe they aren't very safe, and is there an alternative?
Yeah, those schools are not safe exactly because the parents are sending the children there and leave them there. They abandon them there. They're not coming back again because they feel that when having a child with albinism, it's a curse having a child. Therefore, they find these houses to go and dump them and never come again. Because I've been there and asked the teachers, do the parents come to see the children? They said they're not coming. About 50 parents, only 2 parents are coming to see the child. Therefore, the schools are not very much safe for the children. The government given a very small amount of money. Other people are sending things to the schools, but they're not enough for them. They very much need support. A very big support is needed to those schools.
So SHAYMAA, then what is the alternative? And do you believe that your appointment to the government, do you think that that is making inroads in the right direction?
The alternative to those schools is we can't leave the government alone to support those schools. I've just talked to other people to support the schools, not only the government, because what is being given there is just a very few support. Other support must come to other Tanzanians to support, and they have taken the support have been given. As I've told you, it's not enough for them because they're every day, about every week, the 2 or 3 children are sent there to those schools. We have one in about 3 different regions. We have the schools for children.
All right. So
can I say something about this school?
Just 1 second. I would like to bring the conversation back to Vicky first. I have one tweet I'd like to read. So Vicky, Ike in Tanzania writes in, do we have the will to fight this? Which brings up the whole question of political will. Do you think there is the political will to effectively combat this?
I don't think that there's a political will. We lack political will. We have corruption in the judicial system. We have corruption within the police force. And this is not a secret, they admit it. I'm saying there's a lack of political will because if the politicians, if the parliament really wanted this to end, they would have done that as soon as it started. Because we have heard in the past people with bald heads, people with gaps in their teeth. It didn't last so many years. The most was skinning that lasted for about 2.5 years, and it ended. So why so particular? Why is it that with albinism, it is taking that long time? There is no political will. If there was, they would have supported the Prime Minister to keep the ban in place.
Well, Vicky, I'd like to give AL-SHAYMAA the chance to respond to that. Is there political will?
Myself, I say there is no political will because this job has to be done by everybody. But only few people are just struggling with this issue. Not other people are not struggling. Therefore, there is no, as Vicky said, there is no political will to support these issues. It's true. I'm fighting as Vicky and ABDALLAH and Gamariel. They know how I fight, but support is only few people support me. I need a big support from other people, and I have told other members of parliament to support me in this because education is needed. People with albinism are supposed to be removed. They are very much isolated. They are staying very far from the city. They are needed to be being brought in the city areas. That also is needed. I have to be supported.
AL-SHAYMAA, I hear what you're saying, and it sounds like ABDALLAH wants to get in. We will get him in the post show. ABDALLAH, I'm so sorry. We're out of time for the main show, so I promise we will go to you first in the post show. Now, on the next show, we'll be talking about female athletes. Should female athletes with naturally high levels of testosterone be forced to lower the hormone before they're allowed to compete? We look at fairness in women's sports and the debate around testosterone testing. But stay with us. The post show is next at stream.aljazeera.com, and we'll see you online. Welcome back. This is the Stream's online post show. We're talking about people with albinism in Tanzania and some of the violent threats they face. We'll get right back to the conversation, and we will start with Abdallah POSSI, who I had to cut short just as we entered into the main show. So, Abdallah, what did you want to say?
Yeah, there is something about political will which I wanted to say, or I wanted to tell AL-SHAYMAA, is that, you see, I wonder why politicians, especially members of parliament from the regions much affected, are not saying anything, and I expected AL-SHAYMAA to ask this to them. And the second thing, it is not just for the government to go to the parliament and say we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, but it should be the question of asking whether those means to deal with the situations are appropriate and sufficient. And this is why I do not support the whole idea of segregation schools, because by segregating these people, these children, we are violating their rights. But second, we do not move any closer to eliminate ignorance in the region. Those are the only things which I wanted to say as far as political will is concerned.
Right.
So Abdallah, we have a tweet on that point right now. Let me read this to you. Fowles writes in, through sensitization by the government to educate people about the plight of people living with albinism, it'll help a lot. So I'd like to get Gamariel, what do you think about that? What does sensitization and integration look like? How can that happen?
Yeah, you know, as we were speaking about political will, I would say the main gap I see between the government and various stakeholders who are working to fight for the rights of people with albinism is lack of coordination. And I don't know where this gap comes from, because you will see like people who are trying to do and help for people with albinism, they are looking for their own source of funding and resources, but there's no much amount of budget allocation from the government to deal with this issue. So I think coordination is something that is really very important. If the government will take this agenda, as they're taking the agenda of eliminating malaria infections or HIV infections, you can see huge campaign, you can see a huge budget has been set apart to eradicate HIV infections, whatever. So I think the issue of albinism needs intense coordination between the government and stakeholders to work intensively to educate the community, because always you will see like these issues are for non-governmental organizations, but you see no much things being done by the government.
Well, speaking of that coordination, Vicky, I want to bring you back in here, because earlier you also heard AL-SHAYMAA say that the government can't do it alone. So is education really the key to this? Because I know that you traveled around, you talked to people, and you told our producers ahead of the show that some of the people who believe that parts of people with albinism could help them succeed in life. Some of these people were educated doctors, people with education that presumably should know the difference.
Yes, unfortunately, those educated people, politicians, ministers, or doctors, the elite, they are part and parcel of the society that believes that persons with albinism are not human beings. They were born into a society which does not respect persons with albinism, and the society in some certain communities that would want persons with albinism eliminated in the country. And we have had so many cases whereby a doctor would not touch a person with albinism who has got a wound, because the myth is that he will be infected with the albinism, which is not true. Now, being a doctor who has studied biology and maybe genetics will know that you cannot catch albinism just by touching a patient or touching a person with albinism. And so education is very, very important. We're trying very hard. Under the Same Sun is trying very hard to reach every corner of Tanzania, but we're a small organization. We're using media, especially radio, because we know that radio can reach quite a lot of, it can reach the whole country to educate people about albinism. We are going to health and education institutions to educate those scholars over there about albinism. But of course, more concerted effort is needed in order for the government and stakeholders, as Gamaliel has pointed out, to end discrimination. And about the segregation, actually, is not a good thing. We understand that it was for a short while, as a short-term measure, it was good and still good to protect persons with albinism from all these atrocities. But it seems as if it's going to be a long-term process. It's a long-term measure which we are against, because not only that these people cannot, these children cannot reach home and their parents have abandoned them, cannot come and greet them or visit them in these centers, but also we have youth and adults with albinism living in these centers. So we have all sorts of abuses, from physical abuses to sexual abuses. And the politicians know about this. And also the government officials know about this, but because there have been reports and reports, but nothing is being done.
All right, Vicky, on this question of what's being done, just hold on one second. On this question of what's being done, I'd like to bring in the issue of the police. And Gamaliel, I'd like to ask you this. So listen to this tweet. Darla writes in, build the capacity of the police to crack down on such crimes and sentence anyone involved to life imprisonment. Gamaliel, do you think that the police have the capacity to deal with this or not, given the wave of recent attacks?
There are some cases whereby the police try their level best to hold on the culprits and bring them to the court. But, you know, when they enter into the court system, all these challenges that are happening in the court system, you end up those culprits being free in the streets. But there are other cases whereby police, they're taking bribery, and, you find that the case isn't strong enough to go to the court so as, those people who are victims could get justice. So it is 50-50 case, but also, the capacity of the police. Police are also human beings who are coming from the society that believes strongly in witchcraft and believe strongly to witch doctors. So you can see how the challenge is. So sometimes you'll find that the police doesn't have enough resources, because such incidents normally happen in very, very remote areas whereby you cannot have even a police post nearby.
Well, speaking of resources and having enough, I want to give AL-SHAYMAA a chance to respond to that, and whether or not you think the resources are there on the ground to be able to deal with this.
Yeah, about that, I want to speak about police, because I've been in East, the one that was done about 1.5 weeks ago in Igunga. I went there. The police have challenged themselves, because Mungu was the victim, which was macheted the hand, is about 100 and something kilometers from the town where the police were. And sometimes they don't have the materials to move fast to the place of the occasion. Therefore, that's the problem also. The police has many, many challenges. They don't have the resources to do their work exactly what is needed. That's the other problem affecting the police.
Right.
That's what I wanted to include in that.
Can I
Abdallah, go ahead.
Yeah, you see, it's very important to look at the whole. It's very important to look at the whole prosecution system, not only the police but also the office of the DPP and others. Yeah. You see, so I know the cases where the DPP had entered nolle prosequi.
And the DPP, for our international audience, is Abdallah?
Can I go ahead?
Yeah, can you explain that for us? Just sum it up in about 30 seconds, because we're running out of time.
Okay, I've said that it's the whole question of prosecution system. Yes, there are times where police have been doing their best, but there are times when you see that the police might not have done their best. For the police and the investigation or prosecution machinery, the whole of it.
All right, thank you, Abdallah. I'd like to go to the community to hear what they have to say after this conversation of 40 minutes, and you're hearing these stories which are very vivid, and you're hearing the criticisms.
Yeah, it's gotten people really worked up. So I'd like to give the last word to Frankie in Tanzania. He writes, "It's sad. Blame to my government for letting this massacre continue. Time to take action now, my president," and he tags President Kikwete in that. So that's a call direct.
Hopefully he's watching the show. I want to thank all of our guests, Gamariel and Boya, Vicky and Tetema, AL-SHAYMAA, KWEGYIR, and Abdallah POSSI. Thanks for being here. Now, on the next show, a look at fairness in women's sports and the debate around testosterone testing. Should female athletes with naturally high levels of testosterone be forced to lower the hormone before they're allowed to compete? We'll talk about that tomorrow. Thanks for watching.